Hey, what's up guys? Jeff Beers here. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about planning your digital marketing budget, some of the KPIs you should be thinking about before you put your numbers together, and a broad side about how you need to roll all these figures up into a complete budget. But hey, before we jump in, if you enjoy digital marketing tips, news, career advice, and more, then make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see all the great content I've got coming up. Alright, so there's a couple of key metrics that you definitely want to know before you start allocating budget to certain channels. The first thing is cost of acquisition. How much does it cost for you to acquire a customer based on your current settings? Now this could be as simple as a broad calculation if you want to take your whole marketing budget and divide it by the number of customers you got last year. That's a good starting point. Hopefully though you can get over time, you can get more integrated into channel, cost per acquisition, things like that. But the most important thing is to have a starting point and understanding how much your business spends to get people in the door. The next metric that you want to know is what is your lifetime value or 3-year value. There's a lot of different ways to do this. Again, don't bang your head against the wall. The most important thing is that you understand what a customer is worth for your business. Now that can be a lot of things to a lot of different businesses, right? Do your customers frequently have repeat purchases? Are you a subscription business? Do you have upsells? Those are the kind of things that you want to think about to really hammer home what that lifetime value is. And if you're more of a short-term business with, let's say, a higher velocity of sales, then maybe you just take the 1 to 3 year value of your customers instead of breaking them out for lifetime. That can help you see things a little bit more clearly for the upcoming year. And finally, the last metric to think about is your churn rate or your expired rate. How often do customers leave the business after a certain amount of time, right? If you're only selling one thing and after they buy it, there's nothing else for them to do, then you pretty much have 100% churn rate. And that's very uncommon, obviously. But thinking about those things will help you look at your budget planning in a much more clear way. Now, with digital marketing, you could scope things in a couple of different ways from a budget standpoint. You could take your cost per acquisition and apply that to how many customers you want to get to meet your revenue goals, and that would give you some sort of target of your digital marketing budget. So if it costs $50 to acquire each customer for your business, and you're hoping to expand by 200 customers this year, then you're obviously in the neighborhood of $10,000. So number of customers needed times acquisition cost, that gives you a starting point for the type of dollars that you're at least going to need to get started with. Now, things do scale as they get bigger. So in some cases, the more customers you add, the less it costs you per acquisition. So those are some things to think about as well. Another broad way to think about budget planning is through return on investment or return on ad spend. In this model, you would take your target budget, you would then multiply it by your target ROI or return on ad spend, and that would give you some idea of what revenue would come out of the budget money you allocated. Let's say you had $100 in marketing spend and you expect to get a ROI of $5 per dollar you spent. So at the end of the day, your $100 would equate to $500 in revenue. This can be a helpful way to look at things, particularly if you have revenue goals in mind. So if the boss comes down one day and says you need $1 million in sales, you know that you're tracking about $5 ROI, then quite simply how much money to ask for, right? You need to ask for the neighborhood of $200,000. And as simple as that is, and there's a lot of little things that can go into it, that's giving you the ballpark. So when it comes to end of year planning and you get asked how much marketing budget do we need for next year, the first place I would start is what is the revenue goal? Then you just take that revenue goal, go back to how your ROI has been performing, and do a little backwards math. This is a great way to get the negotiation started. So what is a good ROI? Well, obviously it depends on industry and niche and all those different things. But if you're able to manage a $4 to $7 ROI in your industry, I would say that you're doing pretty good. There's always going to be room for improvements, right? But if you're coming in cold with no specific goal on what you should be getting from an ROI standpoint, I would target $4 to $7. And if you're an extremely competitive niche like law, medicine, things like that, then you're going to have to do some research and see what other folks are doing. That number could easily get more expensive in a very competitive market. Now, one of the things that you can do to roll this all into one, now there are two different ways to look at ROI or think about how much money you need to achieve X amount of sales. You could go granular and assign budgets to every channel. So say paid search gets X dollars, affiliate gets X dollars, and you're expecting those dollars to translate into certain amounts of money that ladder up to the ultimate goal. Another way to think about it though is that all marketing channels interact with each other, which is something we'll cover later on this channel. But bottom line, your overall marketing budget needs to have enough money in it to ladder up to your overall revenue goal. And so you got to think about these numbers when they're on the paper. How many new customers do you need? How much revenue would you make just by sort of rolling out of bed and not spending any money? And then the difference between the two is where you're going to likely have to spend to get your wins. So for purposes of this video, if you had a $2 million business in revenue, $1 million of that was customers that were already in your system on some annual recurring model, and you're going to make $1 million no matter what. Then the other $1 million is where your marketing budget has to drive sales. And so when you're thinking about that, if you wanted to say, well, we need $1 million in new money, and in order to reach those people at a $5 ROI, we need $200,000 to get to them. So those are some quick tips to get you started on your digital marketing budget planning process. You can go in as much detail as you want, but I personally find keeping it high level out of the box is a lot better, because then when the high level makes sense first, aka the big budget number versus the big revenue number, from there, you can break things into channels and start getting granular on your projections. But if the big numbers don't line up first, there's not a whole lot of sense to break it into line by line. So I definitely don't recommend that you take your digital marketing channels from the bottom and build up, because that has a tendency to limit your vision on what channels can do. All right, guys, hope this was helpful for planning your digital marketing budgets. Please give me a like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. I'll see you on the next video.